Why do we choose to burn down the life we built? Just to see if we can survive the flames. It is a question that sits at the heart of Los Santos, a city of blinding sun and endless shadows, where three men found themselves trapped in a cycle of their own making. We often look at them and see the chaos, the explosions, the gunfire, the bodies left in the desert, but we rarely look at the silence that drove them there. Michael, Franklin, and Trevor were not just running towards trouble. They were running away from the hollowness of their own lives. And to understand what really broke them, what forced them into that final, bloody confrontation with the world, we have to look past the heists and the money. We have to look at the men themselves. Let's start with the man who had everything, yet nothing at all. Michael Townley, or Michael DeSanta, depending on who you ask and which lie he is telling that day. On the surface, he was living the dream. A mansion in the hills, a pool that sparkled like a diamond, and a life of quiet, suburban boredom. But that boredom was a cancer. It ate away at him every single day. Michael wasn't just retired, he was rusting. He was a shark that had been removed from the ocean and thrown into a goldfish bowl, expected to be happy with pebbles and plastic castles. When we first find him, he is watching his life from the sidelines, screaming at a television, arguing with his family, and feeling the crushing weight of his own irrelevance. The chaos he chases later isn't just about greed. It is about a desperate need to feel something real again. He needed the adrenaline to know he was still alive. The jewelry store heist wasn't a job to him. It was a midlife crisis with a sledgehammer. But you have to wonder, was it really just boredom? Or was it guilt? Michael carried the ghost of his past around like a heavy chain. He had betrayed his best friend, faked his own death, and built a new life on the ruins of the old one. That kind of secret, it festers. It turns into poison. When he sees Franklin, a young kid with the same hunger in his eyes that Michael had 30 years ago, he doesn't just see a protege. He sees a second chance, a way to rewrite the story. But in trying to save Franklin from the life, Michael inevitably drags him back into the fire. It is the classic tragedy of the father figure who destroys the child while trying to teach him how to survive. Michael's chaos was an attempt to fix a mistake that wasn't fixable. He thought if he made enough money, if he pulled off one last big score, the debt he owed to his own soul would be paid. But the ledger doesn't work that way. Then there is Franklin Clinton. If Michael represents the past that refuses to die, Franklin represents the future that is trying to be born, but is being suffocated by the present. Franklin is the eyes through which we see this city. He is tired of the hood, tired of the gangbanging politics that go nowhere, and tired of being told he is small. But Franklin has a problem that is perhaps more dangerous than Michael's boredom or Trevor's rage. Franklin has loyalty. He is stuck between two worlds, the crashing, failure-ridden world of his friend Lamar, and the high-stakes, deadly world of Michael and Trevor. Everyone wants a piece of him. Lamar wants him to stay in the trenches. Michael wants him to be a criminal mastermind. Trevor wants him to be a soldier. Franklin's drive to chaos is born from ambition mixed with frustration. He is like a man trying to climb a ladder, only to realize that every rung he grabs breaks in his hand. Look at the situation with the FIB, the federal agents who twisted his arm. Franklin didn't ask for that life. He didn't want to be a government snitch or a pawn in a turf war between corrupt agencies. But he found himself there because he refused to settle for mediocrity. The tragedy of Franklin is that he becomes the only adult in the room. As Michael spirals into depression and Trevor spirals into insanity, Franklin is the one left holding the bag. He is the one who has to make the hard choices. When he looks at the chaos surrounding him, he realizes that the only way out is through. He cannot go back to being a repo man, and he cannot stay in the middle. He has to burn it all down to rise from the ashes. And that brings us to the spark, the lit match that turned the whole situation into an inferno. Trevor Phillips. To simply call Trevor crazy is to miss the point entirely. Trevor is the physical manifestation of the truth that Michael has been trying to bury for 9 years. If Michael is the mask, Trevor is the face underneath. He is raw, unfiltered, and violent, but he is also the only one of the three who is never lying to himself. Trevor knows what he is. He accepts it. He is the monster that the system created. Why was Trevor driven to such chaos? It wasn't just for the fun of it, though he certainly found a dark joy in it. It was because of betrayal. Imagine for a moment that you give your life to someone. You bleed for them, you kill for them, and then one day, they vanish. You are left alone in the cold, thinking they are dead, mourning them. And then, years later, you find out it was all a lie. That they are living in a mansion, drinking champagne, while you're eating rotting food in a trailer. That kind of revelation breaks something inside a man. It turns love into hate and loyalty into a weapon. When Trevor arrived in Los Santos, he wasn't just looking for his friend. He was looking for revenge. He wanted to tear the facade down. He wanted to drag Michael out of that perfect house and into the mud where Trevor believed they both belonged. The chaos Trevor causes is his way of saying, you cannot hide from who you are. It is fascinating how these three personalities collide. It is like a volatile chemical reaction. You have Michael, the desperate man trying to buy his way out of his mistakes. You have Franklin, the ambitious man trying to build his way up. And you have Trevor, the vengeful man trying to tear it all down. They needed each other, and they hated each other. They were a triangle of dependency. Michael needed Trevor's ruthlessness to get the job done. Trevor needed Michael's planning to give his rage direction. And they both needed Franklin's grounding in reality to keep them from killing each other too soon. There is a moment in the middle of all this, when the walls started closing in, that we have to talk about. It is the moment where they realized that the game was rigged. They were playing by rules that didn't exist. The FIB, led by the snake-like Steve Haynes, promised them protection but only gave them chains. They were used, abused, and tossed aside. It is a moral lesson that echoes through the ages. When you make a deal with the devil, don't be surprised when he comes to collect. But the beauty of their situation was that they refused to die quietly. They were rats backed into a corner, and that is when they are most dangerous. Think about the raid on the FIB building. It wasn't just a heist for money. It was an act of war. It was them taking the fight to the people who thought they owned them. Michael, Franklin, and Trevor moved through that building like a force of nature, erasing the data that held them hostage. In that moment, they weren't criminals in the traditional sense. They were revolutionaries. They were fighting for their freedom against a system that was designed to crush them. It is easy to look at the violence and condemn it, but strip away the context of the game and look at the human core. It is about autonomy. It is about the right to tell the world no. When society pushes you into a box, sometimes the only thing you can do is smash the box, even if you cut your hands doing it. The path to the end was paved with bad decisions, of course. They made enemies of everyone. Private armies like Merryweather, corrupt government officials, cartel members, and gangbangers. The list of people who wanted them dead was longer than the list of people who tolerated them. But this pressure is what forged them. It is a paradox that we see in life often. Adversity doesn't necessarily build character. It reveals it. Under the pressure of Los Santos, Michael's cowardice turned into courage. Franklin's hesitation turned into resolve. And Trevor's insanity turned into a twisted kind of wisdom. We have to talk about the final days. The moment when the debt came due. The billionaire Devin Weston, a man who represented the absolute worst of the wealthy elite, decided that these three were loose ends that needed to be tied off. He threatened Michael's family. He threatened Franklin's life. He treated Trevor like a dog. And in doing so, he made the fatal mistake of underestimating them. He thought he could buy them, or kill them, or scare them. But you cannot scare a man who has already lost everything. This brings us to the ultimate choice, the moral crux of the entire journey. Franklin was told to kill one of his mentors. The system wanted him to break the triangle. The system wanted Michael dead, and it wanted Franklin to pull the trigger. It was a test of his soul. Would he become the lapdog of the rich and powerful? Would he betray the man who taught him everything just to survive? Or would he take the harder path? The path that leads straight into the mouth of the beast. When Franklin, Michael, and Trevor stood together at that gathering spot, looking out over the city that tried so hard to destroy them, they made a choice. They chose Death Wish. They chose to stop running. They chose to hunt the hunters. There's a profound lesson in that. We spend so much of our lives trying to avoid conflict, trying to smooth things over, trying to keep the peace. But sometimes the only moral choice is to stand your ground. Sometimes you have to say enough. So why did they do it? Why did they rob, steal, and kill their way through Los Santos? Because the alternative was to wither away. They were three imperfect men in a broken city, and for a brief, shining moment, they burned brighter than the sun. They remind us that life is messy. It is ugly. It is chaotic, but it is yours, and nobody has the right to take it from you without a fight. The story of Michael, Franklin, and Trevor isn't just a video game. It is a mirror held up to our own desires for freedom, for respect, and for the chance to be who we really are without apology. And if that isn't worth fighting for, then nothing is.